Welcome to Busy Mom Talk, real talk for real moms. I'm your host, Kia, mom of two. So if you're juggling kids, coffee, and chaos, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for educational purposes only, and every individual should seek medical advice from their own medical professional regarding their medical status. So welcome back to another episode of Busy Mom Talk. Today is a very taboo, spicy topic, if you guys want to say that. So welcome, Angela.
Hi, glad to be here.
So let's maybe have you introduce yourself.
Okay, well, I primarily showcase the material that I share on Instagram, and I'm on there as Injecting Truth because I talk a lot about vaccines, and I've been doing that for, oh my word, maybe 4 years. I can't remember exactly when I started at this point now, but a little bit about like kind of, I guess, why I started to talk about this. So, my background is actually in healthcare. I worked in hospitals, I was a clinical director, like I did all of the mainstream stuff for so long. And when I got pregnant with my son, I just followed kind of what I learned and what I was taught and, did all of the things that are the right things to do with quotes. And at his 2-month visit, he ended up having a very subtle, mild reaction, but it was enough that, like, honestly, it shook me. And when I reached out to the provider that he was seeing about my concerns, really the way they handle it was another like level of, oh my word, like this is a red flag. How you're talking to me, how you're handling this. I didn't feel comfortable. And without kind of getting into it too much right now, that was kind of what catapulted me into, like, I guess you could say, like doing your own research and kind of looking into things myself. And it's one of those areas where, like, once you find out the truth, you can't not tell other people. And I feel like I just was like exploding with, like, oh my word, is this true? Oh my word. Like, I just kept hoping that what I was finding wasn't true because it wasn't that I was like pro vaccine. I was neutral, but I just kind of did whatever, like I said, I was told. And then finding more information, I was like, I just have to get this out. And I started doing it with Facebook here and there. Was not well received, which is okay. Which, I have thick skin, so it's fine. But then I was like, you know what? Let me see what happens on Instagram and kind of just get it out there. And the more I shared, the more I realized, like, this is really something that people are hungry for, and they're looking for information to make an informed choice. And that's really like the basis of what I do. I'm not trying to say one way or the other, like what you should do for your family. It has to be a decision that you and your family come to. But I think what's really a travesty is that that conversation isn't allowed to be had in offices. And when you're trying to do your own research, sometimes it can be really difficult to find sources on the other side. So, my goal with what I share and kind of how I share it is to try to say, okay, here's one side. The other side, the pro vax is obviously super easy to find. So now you have both kind of on the scales, and you can look for yourself and say, where do I feel the most comfortable moving forward? What's the best decision for my family? And just to be able to have that so you personally can make the decision and not putting into someone else's hands. So that was kind of a long answer to a short question, but that's kind of like what I do and a little bit about my background and kind of what I share.
Well, I think it's important though, because when you do go into the doctors and have these questions, I think you should have that open dialogue because they are your provider. And if they are necessarily not educated in it, why can't they bring you to a third party that's kind of neutral in it? Because, like here in Canada, public health pushes regardless of your belief. If you think you have an allergy, like they're very strong on no, this is what it is. And I think that it makes people even more questioning of, okay, so why can't we have this conversation? Why are
Yeah,
you not willing to answer the questions?
I think that that's Canada probably for sure, but also the US because realistically, your appointment time is like 10, 15 minutes. The doctor's in there to like check the few things and get out and just give you your, we have like a little info sheet that they give you about the vaccines, but it's clearly one-sided. Sometimes they don't even give that to you till after the vaccine, which is definitely not informed consent. And for them to sit with you and actually go through an insert or go through the ingredients or go through anything is, honestly unheard of. When what happened with my son happened, I remember I went to his 4-month appointment and I was like, okay, I did a little digging previous to this. So I had questions that I felt I should bring to the doctor because, doctors know, and I'll be able to talk to them. And I think I was a little ignorant at that point, kind of having a more hopeful than I should have been. But when I went in and I asked the questions like, hey, can I have one that's like thimerosal free? Can I have this? Can I have that? And you can tell like the climate in that room, it was like the air just got sucked out. Like it was like she was super happy, super nice, loved us as patients because we were there like when I was pregnant, we did birthing classes there, we did lactation classes. So like we were like, we knew each other. And after I kind of started asking questions, you can tell she just was so done. Like she didn't want to answer anything. She kind of just brushed it off, like, I don't have time for this, whatever. And then we were actually given an ultimatum at that appointment. So it was like either you're doing this today, maybe you can wait a few days. Because I said, like, I'm coming to this appointment. I want to learn some more information about XYZ, what he's supposed to get. Can I see the inserts? Can I see this? Blah, blah, blah. I want to share it with my husband because I was by myself. And she was like, either you do this now or in a few days, but if you're not planning on doing that, don't come back. And then she wanted me to sign a paper saying like I'm refusing. And then in doing that, she was saying, basically, I'm okay with my son dying. She's like, if you sign this, you're telling me you're okay with your son dying because you're refusing to get these life-saving measures for your child. And it was such a, like, I mean, I was actually crying in the office. Like, it was such a aggressive turn of events that I was like, oh my word. Like, if you really trusted these as much as you say, if you really valued how well these work, then this should be such an easy conversation for you. You should be able to sit here, explain it, tell me really why they're that good. And I mean, some probably try, but realistically, like what I've learned through the process of digging into all of this, physicians, and I don't know how this is in Canada, but here in the US, like you're lucky as a healthcare provider if you have half a day of training on vaccines. And primarily it's what's the schedule, what's the catch up schedule, and it's not, let's look at all of the ingredients, let's look and see what potential things can cause reactions. Because also going back to like the vaccine schedule as a whole, what we give here, the schedule as a whole has not been safety studied in conjunction with each other. So
Yes, yeah.
they really can't give you that answer even if they wanted to. And I mean, you hear so many of the same like catchphrases of like safe and effective, different like just word vomits of what they've been told to say. And it's not really anything deep and they can't really address your main concerns. And it's kind of unfortunate.
Well, I think the one thing that I've noticed that is super sad is that it's been kind of emphasized how rare these things could be, but they are pretty serious. And
Yeah.
like when I did have my episode with Dr. Stu, he actually kind of explained a lot of things to me about like vitamin K, for example, where he said that there are some instances where you should absolutely be getting the vitamin K injection. Like if you're on specific medication, you are very high risk for things. And like, is that something that you want to kind of risk? It's your own decision at the end of the day. But like here in Canada, they don't even give you papers for the vaccines.
Oh,
I've never
wow.
had a vaccine paper in my doctor's office. I mean, I don't know if that's just like the norm
Well,
here or not, but
ours stemmed from the 1986 Act. So, previous to 1986, there was just a few vaccines on the schedule, but there was one called the DTP, so diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, and it was causing so much damage, like neurological issues with children, that parents were suing and like seeking litigation against the manufacturers of these vaccines because of the brain damage. And in doing that, the companies were saying, oh my word, like we're spending so much on litigation and paying out all of these things that they said it's really not profitable for us to make these vaccines. So they petitioned our own government here to say either you're going to give us like basically blanket liability so that we are protected from this liability aspect versus traditional market forces of just saying like, hey, let's make this product better. Let's not have it cause brain damage. Let's not have it cause all these issues so that we're not getting sued. But instead, I don't even know how they worded it, but somehow it kind of passed through that now vaccine manufacturers and the people that give vaccines, so doctors, nurses, whatever, are not liable, cannot be liable. But in doing that, it also opened up a couple other layers. So we have the VAERS program, which is the vaccine event adverse event reporting system. So that's kind of how we track vaccine reactions, but we can get into that too because it's unfortunately a broken system. And then the other thing is they're supposed to give you, and they used to, like an actual large pamphlet, like many pages of risks, benefits, like basically what you just said about the vitamin K. Like if you're this subset of people, then this would be probably advantageous for you to get. If you're this person, maybe not. Like all of the things, like you can wait for later, whatever. It was supposed to be true informed consent in a pamphlet. And I think it started out that way, but then through the years, it escalated to the point where now it's like a VIS, like a vaccine one-page sheet of a few things like, okay, redness at the injection site, low grade fever, like the things that you hear on those awful commercials, which you don't have in Canada, but um basically, the very mild side of the conversation. So that's why we here get that, because it's technically part of the law, but it should be more robust than it is.
Oh, for sure. And I think too that informed consent isn't necessarily when a mother is so many hours postpartum or 2 months postpartum, not sleeping, like you're in a vulnerable state. And, like it is scary because you do read some of those inserts and you're like, okay, this could happen to my kid. And, I think most parents can speak to this that, like, you're not even worried about the political aspect of this. You're just worried about your child. And so many people think that this is like a political ploy and like, okay, I'm sure the politics get involved here somewhere, but at the end of the day, we want to protect our kids. Like we want to protect our kids from any kind of incident, and like when you start looking at the logistics of things and like the studies that are done, and it's just kind of like a blind trust that the government or whoever these people are just expect us mothers to be like, well, you know what, you got to listen to me because there's no other way around it, but there really is.
Yeah, and I think like when you start to bridge this conversation for yourself, like one of the things that I struggled with initially was like feeling confident about like if my kid gets the illness. Because I think we're so like just polarized around these issues that we fear them so much. Like, oh my word, measles. Like if anybody gets measles, we're done for. Like it's the end, or there's an outbreak and there's so much fear that just pushed on families. So you're like, okay, well, yeah, I'm looking at the insert and it says that they can have convulsions, they can have seizures, they can have, brain swelling, they can have all of these things. So that scares me. But then they're thinking, okay, now the media is telling me my kid can die from measles. So like then they're scared on the other side. So they're like pigeonholed into what decision do I make? What's the best decision? So what I started to do, because like I hate feeling ignorant. Like I don't want to be in that situation where I'm not in control about my children's health, right? So I started to like, okay, let me deep dive into all of these illnesses. Like which ones can I feel comfortable with if my child gets? What's the likelihood that they're actually going to get it? If they get it, is there a treatment option or is it like that's it, they're done? Like and I that's part of the informed consent that's not being told in your office. So it's like, okay, so like for instance, measles, like one of the things that I feel like they try to scare you about is like the SSPE, which is like the brain issues that can happen years after you get measles. Because people are like, well, if you get measles, everything's fine, you get over it, but then like later you get this illness. It's like, okay, first of all, that is a super rare thing to happen, like very, very rare. But what they don't tell you is the actual insert itself lists that as a potential side effect. And when you look at an insert, it's not that the manufacturers are just being like super sweet and kind and writing everything that they think might happen so that you're informed. No, the only reason those things are on that is because there's truly a link to that vaccine. Like these are post-marketing 6.1 in the package insert of exactly what other families have reported, because realistically, these vaccines are tested super short periods of time, max 6 months. So things like SSPE or MS or autism or any of these other neurological things that take time to develop would not be caught on their initial pre-licensure studies. So then you have to look to the package insert for what real world application is showing us. Okay. So when you look at that and you say, okay, long term, SSPE is a factor for the vaccine. How my mind works is, okay, well, the likelihood that they're actually going to catch measles in today's world is pretty low. Okay. So now I'm already starting off with a low chance of them getting the illness. And then if they get it, it's even lower chance of them getting that SSPE versus knowingly injecting them with the virus. Yes, it's a weakened virus, but it's still a live virus, which they can actually get measles from the vaccine. Okay. So you're knowingly putting them in harm's way, and that's still a potential reaction. So now you're like doubling your chances, in my opinion, of potentially having something happen because you're knowingly putting that in to begin with versus by chance, maybe, maybe not encountering it. You know what I mean?
That does make a lot of sense. And I think too that the media definitely plays like mothers and vulnerable parents because, like, for example, here in Canada, somebody in Alberta, their child died. in the hospital. And this is like validated, like fact checked, that they said that it was due to measles. The mother had measles, the baby never did. And the media's playing it like the mother had measles. If you look at the wording, it's not necessarily saying the baby died of measles, but it's insinuating the baby died of measles because the mom had it. And it's so sad because, you read it and you think, oh, wow. You don't start thinking, okay, what did the hospital do? And why is this baby dead? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like there's so many things that it doesn't make sense. And when you ask the questions of those who are scientists that are very well respected in the political system and in the government and in the healthcare system too, like they're very scared, I guess, to lose their jobs. And like if they are so evidence-based and whatever, why can't they have the conversation? Why can't the
Hmm.
conversation be there? And like, like there are some great scientists that do show that like I don't know if you're like completely against all vaccines, but like some people will be like, oh, the polio, if I were to give my kid any vaccine, it would be the polio vaccine because of X, Y, and Z. And then there's like this thing of like, what were they spraying over the country? Like there's just so many different instances that like, unless you know every single, I feel like, pathway, which I'm sure you have, because I feel like you're very well diverse in all the arguments, like it's just kind of hard for parents to know what is right, what isn't right. Like how do parents really get the right
Navigate
answer?
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, I've been doing this for 7.5 years, probably, like thoroughly researching. Like this is my hill. Once I found out, it's like you can't stop. You know what I mean? So I would say I've probably, I mean, I can't even, the countless amount of hours. I do this every single day for that long. Okay. And you're right. It can be hard to know because you hear like, oh, I'm only going to get the important ones. Well, what does that mean? Like, what are the important ones? Like, and like, what's it going to be next year? And what, like, for me, you said like you don't know if I'm against all or not. Where I stand right now, after the research that I've done, this is my personal thoughts, not medical advice by any means, but I have not found any vaccines on the schedule currently that I feel have more benefits outweighing risks. To me, the risks are way too extreme for me to do that. And I mean, even if my kid had some kind of other medical underlying condition, it would really, really take a lot for me to ever actually give a vaccine because I'm in the world of there's other ways to protect your child. There's measures that you can take if your child gets one of these illnesses. And the ones that are like scary, like maybe meningitis, are so uncommon that I don't feel like really there's the need for the vaccine. I'd rather take my chances in life and keep my kid having an intact immune system that's ready to handle something if or when they get it versus, meningitis is a potential side effect for a few vaccines. So there's really no way because oh my child got meningitis when they were young. Well, did they also get a bunch of vaccines? Like we don't. Again, these are the questions that come back to like what you said about like the girl dying in the hospital or the baby. Was the mom breastfeeding? Was the baby given any vitamin A, which we know, like realistically, any complications from measles is usually around a child that's deficient in vitamin A. And then on top of that, did they die with or from the disease? These are all other conversations that aren't being had. And most of the time, like maybe I wonder if that mom was vaccinated. Like, do they
Well, it's
share
actually
that?
it's sad because the baby didn't even have measles. They just
Yeah,
orchestrated the story. And like I think
yeah.
something else, I don't know if that's not really, I don't know the whole story of why, but like it doesn't look good for the hospital, so to speak.
Hmm.
But like, I do wonder though, because I've heard this so many times where people say, I'm not vaccinating my kid, but like if I traveled, I would. Do you kind of believe that, or is it just kind of like,
I would go anywhere and not vaccinate. I'm not I think I'm just so comfortable and confident because of the level of research that I've done that to me there's really no reason for anything when you travel because like who knows who you're coming in contact with at the supermarket. Like there's people that travel to our country that aren't vaccinated or that are immigrating or that are who knows what. So like you could look at like statistically if you go somewhere, say you visit like Africa and you're worried about like dengue or you're like something one of these like odd ones or like Japanese encephalitis in Japan or whatever you might look at. Look at like, okay, what's the risk of my child getting it? What would happen if they got it? Same thing that I would do here. And then like preventative measures, like we use sodium ascorbate vitamin C like candy when we have to. It is like the best to me to knock out infection, to keep your kid's immune system strong. Like I don't use it every day, but if I know, okay, like say we went to like church nursery and there was a kid there that was like sniffling and like it's like you're gonna get this kid's gonna give whatever that was to my kid. Then I'm gonna give them vitamin C when they get home. I'm gonna do a detox bath. I'm gonna do like things that to me are gonna give them the best chance of not getting whatever that was. And like realistically, your child is going to encounter so many other illnesses that are not vaccine targeted illnesses, but we're so trained yet again to fear the ones that there's a vaccine for. You know what I mean? Like hand, foot, and mouth, they don't have a vaccine for that. My kids just had that. So it's like, oh, what is like, are we afraid of that? No. Why? Because there's not a vaccine. But you bet you, if there was a vaccine for it, everybody would be like, oh my word, we can't hand, foot, mouth. Like we can't deal with that. Right. And then like back to your polio comment, I think a lot of it comes down to like looking at history because I think a lot of the times we're taught like these vaccines are what saved our lives and everybody else's life, and that's why we don't have it around, and that's why you can thank, for not actually having this illness and whatever. But really, that's not the case in almost all of the situations. So, like, if you look back at the cases and the death rate, mortality that was coming from these illnesses, they were on decline way before the vaccine came into the picture. Like maybe cases lowered because of the vaccine. Okay, that's fine. Like chickenpox, measles, cases may have dwindled, but the mortality hasn't changed. And to me, I'm not worried if my kid gets the illness. I'm worried if they're going to die from it. Like I care more about that side of the conversation than are they going to get it, get over it, be fine, or is it going to be something more severe, right? So I think having a history lesson, there's a book called Dissolving Illusions by Dr. Suzanne Humphreys. If you're like a book person, I get tons of my information from books. I love books. That's just kind of where I find it. And then what I'll do is like whatever they reference, if I'm unsure, I'll reference their reference. So like that's
Yes,
kind of,
I am such a PubMed girl. People look at me like I'm crazy, but like I'm in
yeah,
university, so I have access to all the studies for free. And I'm not somebody who like scrolls Instagram. I scroll PubMed. I scroll to see like what studies. I love studies. I'm a studies girl. I'm a stats kind
yeah.
of girl. Yes.
Yeah, well, because like I don't want to just take their word for it either. Like I'm just like I don't trust anything. So if they reference something, I'm gonna be like, all right, let me look it up. Like, is it a dated study? Is it a valid study? What's the comparable group? So I'll look through that myself, right? And anybody can do that. And if you don't have access, like you're very fortunate because some things are behind paywalls and you can't access them and you see the abstract and the abstract is like, it's not, you really want to actually read it because they kind of tell you what they want you to know in the abstract. So you have to look through the actual study, which I'm sure you know. But there's a website called the Sky Hub. It's SCI-HUB, and you could access, I mean, I don't know if it's legal or not, but it's there and it's out there. But you can access like basically any article you need to, even if it's behind a paywall. So you just
Oh,
type in like
wow.
either the PMID or the title or whatever. But that's how I get to read them without having like special access like you do. So
Well, I think that's what's like really hard. And I think too that there's an education gap, there's an accessibility gap. And like there is a lot of poverty in North America. There is a lot of, like illnesses that, like the Hep B vaccine. It's kind of strange though, because here in Canada they don't give it until 2 months, and in US, even though we're literally right beside each other, like where I'm actually from, I'm is closer to the States than where I'm living right now. Like why is that? And even like the eye drops, I don't know if you guys do that in the States. Here they don't do that. I mean, they make you sign a paper not to do it, but they tell you not to do it. So
no, we
it's
do it.
okay, but it's just so strange. Like we're neighboring, so like I think it's different when you look at like Africa's vaccine schedule to us, for example. Like you can't really necessarily compare them because there's different levels
Like
of,
yeah.
yeah, like there's so many differences. But
Like
like
are
the
they both
Canada
first
and
world
US,
countries?
like
Are they yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and
So
like it's just so strange.
yeah, I mean, and that's like that's really you're hitting like the nail on the head because realistically, like our fully vaccinated is different than you're fully vaccinated, is different than the UK is fully vaccinated. So like what makes one country better than the others? And then when you look at like the US, like their statistics around like infant death within the first year, we have one of the highest like first world country infant death rates. Like there's a problem. If our healthcare is working so well, then our numbers should like it should show that, right? But in for whatever reason, I don't know why, ours aren't good. But we also give the most vaccines in the first year of life. And it really just comes down to like logically thinking about things like the hepatitis B vaccine. I mean, even 2 months is, I don't feel there's a reason for that. I mean, if you as the mom have hepatitis B, which every pregnant mom gets checked for, you would know, right? If you're gonna have it. So unless your child is using, needles and a drug user, or your husband is, or you are, and there's potential for interaction there, I don't know, or they're sexually active as an infant, which none of that should be happening, you know what is the need for that vaccine? If you're at all considering it, which I still wouldn't, but if you're at all considering it, do it when all of those things start to actually happen for them. Like, are they sexually active at 17? Are they, like, when does that start to happen? And then have that conversation versus as an infant when they're not really going to be exposed and the transmission is just not there. So to me, the risk is, it's all risk, no reward for that one.
Well, I did see somebody talk about how if they're so worried about infants being exposed through needles and sexual activity, that there should be other measures put in place opposed to a vaccine to prevent it. Like when you look at the logistics of that, okay, why are these infants being put in that area? And like I do think, I mean, I'm not judging anyone's situation or whatnot, but at the end of the day, if you're exposing your child to those things at such a young age, even like teen years, like that shouldn't really be the norm. And I think that that's where our world's issue is a
Hmm.
vaccine to prevent it is not necessarily the best option,
Yeah,
right?
maybe teach, safety for how you practice in your sexual life, like even with HPV vaccine. Like, I don't think you need that. It's more of an education lesson for your child on what
Well,
that looks like.
we were the first year, I think, or the second year, like my age group, to get it. We didn't get it. My mom opted out of it. But I mean, like as children, we were fully vaccinated. And I remember I was the only one in the class. I think there's two other people that didn't get it. And they were like, "What's wrong with you?" I was like, "I don't know. My mom won't let me get it." I didn't understand. I was in grade 7, right? And like my dad had cancer, so we were always kind of like more iffy. Like we didn't go around people who were sick in a way, and like we'd have to wear masks at the end when my dad was like super immunocompromised and stuff like that. So we weren't necessarily like against vaccines. My dad was actually like a pro-vaccine person, I guess you could say. But like when the HPV one came out, they were like, this doesn't really seem right. There were so many questions and nobody answered it. And we have a great family doctor. Like he's never once been like, no, you can't come here. I know some people they just get completely shoved away, but like here in Canada, I don't actually think you get the flu vaccine every year. I've never had the flu vaccine in my life. And I don't know if that's like on your routine that you guys get it or it's just recommended.
I mean, it's part of our schedule. So if you follow the schedule, your kid will get it. It's everything is recommended. Like nothing's actually mandated, but if you want to go to school, then they want you to have these. So
But do
like,
you need the flu vaccine to go to school? Because I don't think that's a thing here.
it depends. So every state sets up their own rules. So basically what happens is like there's a guidance. So there's a CDC vaccine schedule that they recommend for every child at every age. And you can look it up on like the CDC's website. It'll say 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, eight, whatever, all the way through. And then every state takes their own recommendations from that. So they'll say, okay, here in wherever you are, like, I think it's Connecticut, maybe, you need to have it for school for the flu. Okay. And I mean preschool. Like you have to have it like littles get it because you start at 6 months old with that one. So they'll say in our state, we adopted this schedule. So your children have to have all of these things in order to attend school. And what's worse is Connecticut only has a medical exemption. So some states have medical, well, every state has medical. Some states have religious and some states have philosophical. So either you can say like, I don't want it because I don't want it, check a box, move on. Religious because of your religious beliefs. And then medicals, obviously, you have to have doctor intervention. And some kind of are weird with how they like toe the line between medical and religious. Like even though it's a religious exemption, a doctor has to sign off on it, which is weird to me. It's like separation of church and state. But either way, you can get an exemption when it comes to school. And when they're younger, it's really up to you kind of what you do if you're not putting them in daycare or pre-K or something. But they do make it challenging within some states to really do what you want if you're trying to go to school, like public school.
Wow. See, yeah, it's so strange. I do remember in grade, I want to say grade 10 or 11, I was like a couple years behind my vaccine. I never got them at school because I was someone who would faint. So I'd always have to go to my family doctor, but I kind of just like, we just never really followed up with it or whatever. And they sent me a letter at home saying I was suspended until I updated my status. And I remember like to my mom, like, what? What do you mean? I was so confused by it and whatever. We had to call public health and all that stuff. But like, it's just so strange because here in Canada, I feel like there's so much more leniency with it, I want to say, or like there's more, I don't know, maybe it's not as common, I would say, I feel like to find people that don't vaccinate or whatever, but like it's just not really like, I don't know, like a huge thing. You know, like I know a
Yeah.
couple people who they just got a paper done and then that was it. It wasn't like this huge thing of like, I had to lose my doctor. And like I do know a lot of people in the States, they share how now they can't go to all these clinics. They can't do all of these things because their kids aren't vaccinated or they're not vaccinated. And like, I do think COVID played a huge role in it. And I think that's when it started becoming even more political.
Yeah, I mean, I 1,000% agree that COVID was like the shining light for so many because I've been in this conversation for so long. I mean, it was lonely for a while. Like you were like the black sheep, you couldn't bring it up. Like I lost friends, family members were not happy with me. Like it was because I'm obviously very outspoken about it. But, after COVID, it was like you kind of saw like behind the curtain for how that was made, which truthfully, the COVID vaccine is probably the best tested vaccine out of all the vaccines, which is wild because it's also horrible. But that's the only one that for a short amount of time they had a saline placebo. None of the other ones had that. Like, there's just so many things, but I think people saw that and they didn't like, it's one thing to feel pressure to do things for your kid because like you're afraid of them not being healthy. You want to, do everything to benefit them. And they can't say like, hey, mom, like now I feel burning or now I feel this or now like things that we're told are normal for children that really aren't normal. But once you're putting it on an adult and now you're forced to get something to work, to travel, to whatever, you're like, hey, like you're stepping on my stuff, but like you don't really see it as a problem sometimes with kids. But now that it like moved to the adult world and your things were being taken away, I think it really made people that never questioned it for their children question it for themselves. And then they were like, well, if this is happening for me, maybe I should rethink the other ones because, like, you just start to learn more and more, like I said. And I think that that's really the best part about COVID is that people started to see the truth for what it was and started to ask questions and really just dive into it for themselves. Like, obviously, there are some people that are just never going to get it. Like, if you can go through that and you're still wearing a mask today, I feel bad for you. Like I'm just like you that has to be such a scary place to live in your mind where you're still afraid of this virus at this point. But the people that were able to like critically think and really come to their own conclusions and want to ask questions, like it has been great. There's so many more parents I feel like that are at least trying to do their own research and kind of dig into it themselves instead of just blindly doing whatever are the recommendations.
Yeah. I think too that with COVID, it was very scary and people were, they started saying, well, do you want your grandparents to die? Do you want the elderly in your life to die? And like, I do think that some people who got COVID or, whatever the virus was that it truly was, like people did have really bad reactions and some people did die from it. But, people die from pneumonia. They die from so many different things that it was just everything was so hyper fixed on COVID. And
Yeah.
like, I don't know if you can say this, that it was your experience as well, but in my life, I had very people that were very big on one side all the way to the end and other people on the other side who like wouldn't even converse with you if you got vaccinated, completely cut you out of their life. Like they said the horrible things to you, like they hope that you die if you got the vaccine. Then I had people on the other side that were like, well, if you don't get vaccinated, you can't talk to me anymore. If you don't get vaccinated, you don't deserve health care. Like there was just such strong beliefs that it was like this is insanity,
Yeah, I
you
mean,
know?
it's definitely polarized people to have like one opinion versus the other. And I think, at least where I was in my life at that point, because I've already been outspoken about vaccines, people kind of already knew where we were on things. So we didn't have as much like divisiveness. Like my whole family kind of agrees with me now. They didn't in the beginning, but they agree with me now. And like when COVID came, it was just like nobody's doing that. So we weren't even worried about it. Now, do have friends that are very much pro, and we are just on the field of like, let's agree to disagree. And I think that like that's really big on their part because like what I've found through doing this is that like I don't care what you choose to do. Like if you want information and you ask me questions, I'll give it to you. But I'm not going to tell you, like, I'm not going to say, oh, you're a bad mom if you do or you don't, or like whatever, or bad family. But at like on the flip side, I've been kicked out of like coming to parties because my kids aren't, up to date, whatever. And they're afraid and like that part gets me. Like if you trust in your what you're doing, then you really should have no fear around being around unvaccinated people because you're protected. And even if your child isn't of age, because that's like where the other thing is, or like, oh, I don't have like friends with immunocompromised children, but if one of them did, or if they're not old enough to get the vaccine, or, then they don't want my kid to be around their kid, like, it just comes down to me like a little piece of education missing from their experience, because realistically, like, one, my child's not going to spread something that they don't have. Like, and if my kid's not vaccinated, I'll know that they're sick versus people that get their kids vaccinated that are now asymptomatic spreaders, which can happen from vaccines. So then, truthfully, my kids are probably more at risk to get something from your kids versus the other way around. And if my kid was showing signs of something, then I wouldn't bring them around because that's just what people do, right? And then on the flip side, which some of these conversations, like, I'm just going to have these one day, but like the friends I'm no longer friends with because of situations like this, you know, I want to ask them as an adult, did you go back? Did you go back and up on those 72 plus vaccines that you're asking my kid to get? Because realistically, the titers, like if you ran a titer test, like blood draw to see like what antibody levels you have in your blood, I bet you have barely any, if any at all. Because like from personal experience, when I started working in healthcare, I was 22. I was fully vaccinated as a child. My mom did everything. So I should have been golden. I should have got those titers and they would have been like, perfect, start your job. But guess what? I had nothing. Like literally, they were like, you came back with, you have no antibodies to anything you were vaccinated for, except for chickenpox. But I actually had chickenpox. I wasn't vaccinated for it. So they were like, you're gonna have to get all of these vaccines again to work in the hospital. And it wasn't like all of the ones on the schedule, but it was like a decent chunk that they wanted me to get again. So unless those parents are going back and getting vaccinated again, I want to say, you're just as much a threat to your own child as my children are to your child because you didn't go back and get updated. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing. And even too, in pregnancy, you can actually lose all of your antibodies. So when you're pregnant, they usually test to see if have antibodies for specific like rubella, I think it is, and stuff like
Mhm.
that. But my one friend, she's a teacher in the school board. She had all the vaccines she had to re-get because after her pregnancy, she lost everything. Prior to her pregnancy, she was fine. Afterwards, it's like a game changer. And like these are things that people don't really tell you. And I'm sure in the vaccine insert, it doesn't say after pregnancy, you can lose your immunity, or after this. I'm sure there's other things that you can, lose your immunity to it. So it is a conversation to be had.
Yeah, I actually haven't heard that about pregnancy, so that's something that I'll have to look into. But I know that they look for rubella because of congenital like rubella and how it could affect the baby. So that's definitely something that they check for. I didn't know like I can't speak to that, like that actually pregnancy gives you like amnesia because I don't know about that if that's actually a thing or not. But as far as like rubella, what they'll want to do with that is give you the MMR right after you deliver because they won't give it to you during pregnancy because it's a live virus vaccine, which makes sense. But what they don't tell you is that you can actually pass the live rubella virus through breast milk and give it to your baby. So yes, you won't have the congenital aspect of it, but your baby can still get it through the breast milk. And there's been cases where babies have had rashes and other occurrences from breast milk,
And then
you
they
know?
tell you that's in case you get pregnant again. That's what they
Yeah.
told me at least.
Yeah. It's not, I don't know, it's not worth it. And then when you look at like statistics, how likely is your child actually to get that? How likely are you to contract it? It's so low. It's like, to me, risk benefit is everything. So you have to look at everything that you're putting in your body, what possible outcomes can happen. I mean, even with like birth interventions when you are pregnant, like like I'm pregnant right now. And like that conversation with the physicians, because I'm actually having a hospital birth reluctantly, but I have to because of my history. And I'm already like, I was like, just write in my chart that I'm going to be difficult. It is what it is, like, because I want to limit interventions and I want to really have that conversation before I'm in it and I'm feeling pressured and stressed because that's really no place to make a decision. And even when it comes to vaccines, it's like hand in hand. If you ever are in an office, nothing's life or death. You can take a few days to think about it. If they say, hey, today we're doing XYZ, and you're like, oh, I didn't research this enough, I don't feel comfortable enough, then just put a pin in it. Go home, research. When you're of level head, you're not feeling under pressure, you can actually think and then come back if you want them, great. If you don't, great, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Well, congratulations on your pregnancy. So, for this pregnancy, do you feel like you have the confidence in your physicians that they're not going to be pushy, or are you kind of like worried about it?
Well, I already switched positions once. So the reason I did is because I'm going to try to do a natural birth as much as I can in a hospital setting. Like I said, it's not my ideal situation, but it is what it is. And the first provider I saw was a PA, but she really was rattled by my questions, and you can tell she was like not really thrilled to be working with me, which was fine. And I wanted to do a VBAC because I had a previous C-section. I actually had two, and because I this will be my fourth child. And she's like, well, a physician has to sign off on it, so I can't even say yes or no anyway, whatever. So when I met with the physician, he was great. I mean, I came prepared with like a list of statistics because I was ready for a brawl because I was like, I don't know how this is gonna go. So I was like, here's the statistic of having a VBAC versus here's a repeat third C-section. Here, like all of the things, so I can really say, like, listen, from a safety perspective, actually doing a VBAC is so much safer and it gives so many more benefits to the child. Like I had all of these things laid out, but it turned out that he was super awesome. Like I was like, wow, you are like, I really was like pleasantly surprised, which doesn't happen often. And I was like, great. But he's like, well, it is great. He's like, but because we're such a large network, he's like, there's about 60 providers that work here. He's like, so the likelihood that you're going to get me is like 1 in 60. So you don't know who you're going to get during labor. And he's like, so you just have to feel comfortable with that. And I was like, ooh, I don't feel comfortable with that because once if I get somebody like the girl I just had who was really a negative Nancy. So I decided to switch to a single practice provider that she's like more holistically minded. She's not as much as I wish she was, but she's like, I basically did an interview process and I was like, this is what I want. Are you okay with it? This is what I want. Are you okay with it? And she was like, yep, yep, yep. Because I was like, I want delayed cord clamping and I don't want like delayed cord clamping like a minute. I want it delayed, truly not pulsing like. And she's like, nope, that's fine. I was like, all right, I want to be able to do like skip K, vitamin K, skip hepatitis B, no eye ointment, skip on the bath, like all these things. She's like, yeah, she's like, that's like more like on the hospital stuff. She's like, but I don't care. I'll sign off on it. And I was like,
Wait,
all
they
right.
still bathe the babies right away in the
Oh yeah.
States?
It's like within the first 24 hours, I think. But I want it like I just was like,
Yeah.
wait on all of it. Yeah.
People thought I was crazy when I didn't bathe my newborn for like 2 weeks, and they were like, "What do you mean you didn't bathe them?" I was like, "What? I don't need to." And
No.
like when I was born, I guess they did it within 4 hours. They did it
Oh
like right
wow.
away. So yeah, like even my one friend, her daughter was in the hospital for 5 days, and they were like, "Don't bathe her." Like even if the hospital comes by because it's kind of like procedural or whatever to ask if you want to
Hmm.
bathe the baby, they were like, "Just wait," especially because she wasn't in the NICU, but she was just kind of like being monitored. They were like,
Hmm.
"Just wait on it because it helps them build their immunity and stuff."
Yeah,
But
there's
it's
so
just,
many
yeah.
benefits to keeping it on. So all of these things, so like I'm hopeful that she is gonna work out, but I mean, at the end of the day, obviously you don't know what's gonna come up when you're actually in labor and everything's going on. I hired a doula this time, which I didn't have a doula the last few times, and a little bit naive of me. Like, I feel bad, but like I had an idea of what a doula was in my mind. Like, I thought they were like somebody that like helped you move and whatever, but like that was it. And I don't really like to be touched. Like during that time, I was like, I don't think it's gonna work out for me. But then my friends, like I have like a crunchy community that I'm like, my friends, and they're like, no, they can advocate for you. They can like do this and that. I was like, oh my word, I didn't know. So I had an interview, loved her. I was like, all right, we're doing this. So now I have a doula this time, which I think is going to be super helpful. So I'm just trying to set myself up to have the most success possible before I'm in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think too, like not having to argue or fight for yourself and your like what you want is really important. And it's funny because my one friend, she's a doula, and she was saying how it's like your partner, but without the emotional like distraught that partners go through when they see their wife
Yeah.
giving birth or whatever. They start to get like antsy and they're not gonna, kind of know what you want and they start forgetting things and,
Hmm.
like
Well, and speaking to that, like my husband is exactly that. Like he's he's like the sensitive, sweet, like he gets emotional, whatever. So for having her there, I'm super excited because it takes the pressure off of him. And like a previous experience that we had with my second child. So this is really important. Like regardless of where you're giving birth or like what you're doing in life, like you and your spouse or the father, mother, like whatever, should be on the same page as much as possible because I ended up having to have an emergency C-section with her. And I already had signed declinations. Like, so you can sign ahead of time, like, I don't want the vitamin K, I don't want hepatitis B, whatever. And then what ended up happening was after that C-section, I was like in the recovery. I was out of it, like, because they ended up having to sedate me because of how aggressive things became. And they tried to have my husband retract what I had signed. I was like, oh my word, like, how dare you? And he's like, the way they were saying it, he's like, it didn't make sense. And I didn't know what they were asking. And he's like, luckily, I like was a half with it, heard what they were saying. And he's like, you like exorcism, like sat up and was like, blah, like, and like, get out. And like, then they left. But like, you just don't know, like, what might come later. So you all have to really be very like firm on your decision. Like some I guess like yes, you can have some wiggle room with certain things. Like are you gonna eventually get epidural or not? Like you can play it out, see how you feel, whatever. Like there are things that I think you can be in between on. But other things that you're definitely firm on, stay firm, get yourself knowledgeable because they are very good at trying to increase the fear level when you're in a vulnerable situation, which I feel like is super wrong, but it happens. And
It's
not necessarily,
sad.
yeah. And I'm not trying to like paint a picture of healthcare workers as being bad people because they're not. Like I was one of them. But I think that they're doing what's trained. I think that they're doing what they think is best, and they are trying to tell you what they know, which that's why it comes back to you doing your own independent looking into whatever you can to be as confident as possible because like the problem with like listening to me or some other like person who knows where about vaccines or anything is that when you're in one of those situations you're not going to have the confidence that you should because you're just listening to somebody else. So that's why like when I share on my page, I put all the references. Like I'm not like take my word for it. Look at it yourself. Like
Well,
this is
that
where
that's the reason why I wanted you to come on because it's not like it's just it is a lived experience. It's what you've experienced and whatnot, but you're also into the studies, you're into the stats, you're into, maybe they do say that this is a life-saving thing, but there's also all these other issues that you
yeah.
may not be able to find. And if you do want to find it, you got to jump through hoops for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I already did the legwork. So here, you just look at it. So that's the thing. Like don't just take it for face value. Look into it for yourself so you can feel as confident as possible.
Yeah, and I think that's what it's hard though is that, like I don't know about you, but when I went into motherhood, I did not know about all of these things. You kind of just think, okay, you either have a good labor, you don't, you either have like a vaginal delivery, a C-section, like there's just it's good, it's bad, you don't know. Like I've never met somebody who's like, "Oh, I had a terrible birth," or, and it wasn't until I actually moved to Ottawa where somebody was like, "Yeah, I had birth trauma." And like that's kind of where this all kind of like built upon. And I've realized now like how horrible, I don't know how to say horrible, just how gapped and empty the system is for mothers.
Hmm.
Like moms can't just access things. And if they are accessible, it's like, hey, now you gotta do this, you gotta do that, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. But then it's like you also need to sleep, feed your baby. So what are you gonna do? Are you just gonna
Yeah.
do blind trust or are you gonna look into all these things?
Well, and that's why you look into it before the baby comes. Like my research with my son started like after he was born, and I was like, do vaccines cause autism? Like, like on Google. I was like, well, it says no, so I guess we're good. So like I should have done it before, but like it really wasn't even something on my mind. Like I was researching like what bottles to buy and what's the best mattress and what stroller to get. Like I was so overwhelmed with making a registry that I didn't even think about this stuff. And like this is way more important than any of that stuff. So really like putting the time in before you're sleep deprived, before you're doing, everything stressing out about baby, before you're like not mentally just all there all the time, do it when you have the time before the baby comes. Even if you have other kids, like do it at night when they're sleeping or do it during naps or whatever, but like make the time because you will regret it because you can always make a decision later, but you can't take back something after it happens.
Yes, yes. I do have one question though, because you are in the States, and I think we did chat a little bit about what RFK Jr. was going to be putting out about the Tylenol and autism. And I do think you've made a post about this. Like, do you truly think that it gave the MAGA movement maybe a little bit less credibility because of what they've put out, or do you think it's just where they're going as a positive thing?
Like you mean with like the acetaminophen or
Yes. Like, do
I
you think
mean,
them blankly stating if you take Tylenol, your child will have autism?
I don't think they said your child will. I think it said your child will have a higher likelihood of getting
Okay, well, Trump
autism.
said it. I should say Trump
Yeah,
said it. Trump
I
said,
think
don't take, yeah, what Trump said is what I should say.
yeah. I wish that he would have had I love Trump, but I wish he would have had like a little bit of like coaching before that event. So because he like misspoke on a bunch of things. Like he said like, "Oh, just separate the MMR, do the measles." Well, you can't. Like in the States, as far as I know, it's not available in Canada either, but you have to get the MMR. You can't get
You do.
measles, mumps, rubella separately. Like they used to have it. And truly, if we cared about the safety of a child, they would have no problem splitting it up because they're caring about if we're getting the protection or not, right? Not whether it's combined or separate, whatever. So like that he misspoke. There was other areas, but like in my opinion, like if RFK would have just came out and said like it's vaccines, like that would have been too aggressive. I think to really it would have shaken up things in maybe not the best way. So I think he has to tread lightly for several reasons. Like one, he's in this position for a short amount of time. So if he just like would bulldoze, things over and say, okay, we're getting rid of all vaccines, or, there's every state can do whatever they want, whatever, the next guy that comes in can just change it. So you really have to educate the people and let them feel empowered and let them learn the truth for themselves so that they can stand behind a decision so that when the next person comes into office, like they're not going to be able to like change the minds anymore. Like it's not going to be a manipulative tactic. And I think like there's already plenty of studies that do show that acetaminophen during pregnancy can lead to autistic traits, behaviors, whatever you want to call it. So I'm glad that that was spoken about. I do wish there was a little bit more like on vaccines, but I do feel like that's coming. And I feel like they really just have to have like the most robust and thorough data to present because there's going to be people poking holes at it the most they can. Like, I don't know if you saw or if you, I actually don't think you can watch it in Canada. The High Wire, I think like for some reason
There's
it's
so
like,
many things we can't watch now. And
yeah,
if
which
you
is,
guys share stuff on your page, half the time we can't even access it because it's like,
I can't even
yeah,
believe that. That blows my mind because the High
yeah.
Wire is an incredible, incredible resource. And I watch them. It's on every Thursdays. I don't know. You can try to access it, but I feel like you can't. I don't know. But you might be able to access. It's called an inconvenientstudy.com. It's a new release of a study that was done through Henry Ford about vaccines and just basically their association with chronic health issues and how comparing vaccinated versus unvaccinated, which is really the study that you would want to know, okay, is it causing autism? Is it causing ADHD? Is it causing whatever? Unless you have a population that's completely unexposed, how would you even know? So this study did that, and it was a really robust study. And what's even more wild is a few years back, the CDC was commissioned to do this study. And instead of actually doing it, what they did was they put a study together saying how to do a study. Like it's just so crazy. So instead of saying like, okay, let's do the study, they said, if we were to do that study, here's how we should do it. Like that's what they came up with all of their millions for funding. But what happened was this Henry Ford group, they took that, like how to do the study, and did the study with what they were told how to do it. So when you're trying to say like, oh, well, they didn't do this right or it's flawed or whatever, it's really not because it's from the horse's mouth. Like, and someone else can go replicate it. Go ahead. So like I'm wondering if they were waiting for more of that type of data to come out to say, look, here's what we know, here's what we've seen when we compare the groups, who's actually healthier, who has more chronic issues, who has autism, who doesn't. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's the thing. Like, at least for, like my group of people that I kind of converse with and stuff, they were kind of more leaning to how great this would be and this information would be. And then you hear Trump on the TV say this, and then you're like, okay, there's no credit here, And like, I think a lot of people are like, okay, well, I've taken Tylenol and my kids don't have autism. Or, some moms whose children do have autism, they're like, I don't even take Tylenol. And it's almost like a slap in the face of like, okay, you gave your kid autism because you gave them Tylenol. It's like, okay, like, I'm not saying that there is no link because I do think like maternal fevers, like there's so many reasons why people are taking Tylenol, but like in that one political stunt of like, if you take Tylenol, whatever, I think it really just drove away from like the real reason that
I
people
mean,
want this information.
I don't know about that. I think that they have to throw it out there as they get it because, like,
Yeah.
realistically, autism is multifaceted. Like, it's not just one thing. And I mean, it would be great if it was because you could just remove it, but it's not. Like, there's kids that are never vaccinated that have autism. There are, people that partially vaccinate that do, that don't. Like, there's so many ways you can get a diagnosis of autism because there's so many different things that go into what that looks like. So it's, to me, there's 1,000 environmental factors that the longer we're here, like our parents didn't have to worry about GMOs, about pesticides, about EMFs, about Tylenol during pregnancy, about like whatever. Moms are getting more vaccines during pregnancy than ever before. Kids are getting more vaccines. Like, but like there's so many things, processed foods that really can tie into it. Now, I'm not saying I personally think vaccines is the main cause. Like I just do because of all of the stuff I've looked at. Like encephalitis, encephalopathy is a huge problem that is listed on so many vaccine inserts. And autism is a diagnosis, it's not a condition. So it's like you're not going to list it as a reason on the package insert, which actually it was listed years ago, but it's not anymore. But that's a whole other conversation. But the point is, you're doing all of these things to cause autism like traits in a child with like brain swelling, whatever, like the DTaP scream, which is 3 hours long, inconsolable screaming, which is a sign of encephalitis, which can then, the brain damage can then turn into what looks like autism. So all of these things and the factors are there. So I do think that that's probably the main cause because we're injecting something into a healthy body that's not supposed to be there, that's going to cause an immune response, that's going to cause allergies, that's going to cause all of these other problems. So why, to me, wouldn't that be the main one of the main reasons? But again, if you have a susceptibility, so like say your child has MTHFR, so I don't know if you, okay,
I know
so
what
like
that
a,
is, yes.
yeah, so like a methylation problem. So basically, that puts them already at a greater risk. And this is something that like families aren't testing their children for beforehand. Like, so say you are pro-vax, fine. You should want to know, like, how well does my child detox from this, what I'm giving them? Because they're getting multiple vaccines on one day. Maybe they can only handle one. Maybe they can't handle any. I mean, you don't know. So if they're already genetically susceptible because of this, and a lot of people have it, between 30 to 70% of people have at least one gene mutation. So if you're one of those people that has that, you should really reconsider or think about how you want to do the schedule if you're going to do it at all because your child might be at greater risk. You know what I mean? So there's a genetic component, boys versus girls, how they detox. Like there's just so many different things that need to be in the conversation. So like I'm wondering how it's going to be presented to be able to be as well received as possible. And it's going to be a
Yeah.
challenge.
Well, I think that's what it is. And like, I think that people are curious. People do want answers, especially when you have a neurodivergent child and, like you have to suffer with the system who is not supporting your child, is not supporting your family. You are fighting every little thing that you have to just for your child to have like basic care or a doctor or whatever it may be. Like, you want answers. And, like, I think it's hard to be like, how else am I going to get these answers, right? And I think that scientists do need to keep pushing for it, like, like exhaust everything. And you know what I think is really hard is that people don't understand studies.
Yeah.
And they
Well,
take advantage though of people who are uneducated.
yeah. Well, and I think like if you're somebody that doesn't know studies, another great book for autism is How to End the Autism Epidemic by J.B. Hanley. So his son is autistic. And I think his son like helped him write this book. So his son is like aggressively autistic, like it's not like mild, right? And I don't know if you've heard of spellers. Have you heard of that?
No.
Okay, so if anybody's listening, you need to do this. If you have a nonverbal autistic individual that you know, or your family member or whatever, check out, I think it's just like spellers.com. Maybe you can put it in the show link or whatever. But basically, it's a communication method for people that can't verbalize, but they can actually use like their motor skills to use a letter board and communicate. And they have a documentary on it. And then they also like talk about like setting up with OT, PT, whatever, with an individual that's trained to use this. And it is like, grab a box of tissues. Like you watch that documentary, it is mind blowing. Like there's kids that are like 17 years old, have never spoken a word in their life, finally can communicate with this letterboard and say like, "Mom, I've been here the whole time."
Wow.
Like they're
That gave
mentally
me chills. That's
like
wow.
I know. It's like I was like openly weeping watching it. Like they are there, they're not dumb. They're neurologically where they should be at their age or beyond, and they just haven't been able, they're in a prison in their own body, not being able to communicate. And like through that, like that back to that book, like it took me a while to read that book because I thought it was only about autism, but it's really not. It's about so many different factors that talk about like the vaccines, the ingredients, whatever. But he has a whole chapter for this, to get back to what I was saying, on the studies that show how vaccines can lead to autism. Like when you're looking at studies, like and kind of like the best way they can to kind of present how this is done, if there's a biological component in your body that showcases how like cause and effect is there, that's like a game changer. And this was, I think this was published maybe in like 2018, and there was studies then that said, okay, introducing aluminum is going to elicit this response in the brain. This is where the aluminum is found in the brain versus like Alzheimer's. This is how, because of the way the macrophages uptake it, why it potentially can cause this neurological event. Like it's like all there, like step by step by step by step, how the cascade, the, you know, the dominoes can fall in the way of getting your child to have an autism diagnosis. So
Well,
like,
I'm
and he,
definitely gonna read. I'm definitely gonna read it. I'll even link it too, because I do think that, like when you're in that thickness, I can't even imagine being in that myself. But like I do know from, friends that I know, family members, whatever, that like it is hard. You are vulnerable and like you almost grasp at straws, right? Like
yeah.
anything you like, yeah.
And I mean, realistically, like what hurts my heart is that these families come out and they share their experience and they get gaslit and they say, you know, it wasn't the vaccines, whether it's autism or whether it's, you know, anything else, a tick, you know, eye issues, whatever. Like, I mean, seizures, any of that. They're just gaslit into saying it wasn't the vaccines, it was something else. But really, like, we have to listen to these parents because what parent would want to say it was because of something I did? Like that is
Yeah.
something that is like you have to look at yourself and say, I chose this and this is what happened. Now, I'm not putting fault on the parent. Like I did it. I didn't research. My son had, like I said, a super mild reaction. I'm very fortunate. I don't know what would have happened if I kept vaccinating. But I struggled with like feeling guilty for not looking at it beforehand. And the thing that stinks is like you put your faith in a system, you believe they want the best for you, you trust that they know more than you, and then you're lied to and you're misled and you're, like I said, gaslit. All of these things happen, and it's just really, really sad. And it stinks that it takes an event to actually change your path or to pivot. And I think that that's really brave for the parents to say, let me look at this, because again, they have to do a lot of self-reflection, which is hard, and say, maybe there's a different path that I should be taking, you know?
Yeah, I think too that like I've heard this so many times that like parents are child's best doctors. Parents know more about their child than anybody else in the world.
Oh yeah.
Like you're the one who knows, and it would take a lot out of like your soul to even be like, I did this to my kid, or like to truly believe that like this is linked. Why, if you're looking for a reason, why would you just X everything else out and be
Yeah,
tunnel vision on this? Yes.
it's easier to say, oh, it's genetics, because then it takes the burden off of you, the system, everything else. But to say it might be something that was done to my child is harder to say. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
there's also no support there, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, because then you're the crazy one, whatever. But anyway, that's just a little, you know.
Yes. Well, kind of on like the last little note here, like what would you kind of say to parents who are, on the vaccine schedule? They maybe want to start looking more into it. Where would you say is their first step?
Well, to me, there's no harm in waiting and researching. Like, there's nothing bad's going to happen from stopping, but something bad could happen from continuing. So, figure it out before, like, that's like step one. And then because it is so overwhelming, just look at where your kid's at in their age. So, like, are they 2 months, 4 months? You know, are they five? Like, whatever, however old they are, look at the schedule for Canada or US or wherever you're listening from and say, okay, what's next? What are they expected to get next? Let's just start there. So, like, if they're going to be doing, say you're pregnant and you know, okay, vitamin K is going to be first, Hep B is going to be first, start there. Don't worry about pneumococcal, polio, MMR. Like, then you're going to be like in a tizzy. So, start with whatever's next. And then there's a book, another book. It's called To Vaccinate or Not to Vaccinate by A.M. Antonio, is the author. By the way, I have all of these on my page somewhere. So, if like you can't find them, just
I'll
whatever.
definitely link your page so they can go find
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. So you can look it up while it's on Amazon, but just in case you can't find it. So that book breaks down each vaccine. And it's like, because I like to be able to like hunt and find things quick and not have to like read from start to finish because I'm a mom. Like it's life is crazy. I can't just sit down and like read for fun anymore. So it'll tell you like, okay, here's the vaccine, here's like potentially what's wrong with this vaccine, here's the safety profile, here's what else you can do. Like there's like a nice little breakdown in each one. So I think that that's really helpful. And then like again, just looking at the illnesses. So like you can go through each illness and say, what's the likelihood that my child's going to get it? Are they going to die from it? Are there other treatment interventions? So like if we're looking at like right now, whooping cough is like coming full steam because we're getting into the fall, winter, and like they're going to start scaring people about whooping cough. And so like whooping cough cases can vary every year. They can be in the thousands. Like we can have a really high case rate, but the death rate doesn't really change much. The death rate is super, super low. I think it was like the data that we have in the US, I think that last we can see is like 2022 or 2023 that they have data for. But there was like under the age of one, there was like 2 or 3 deaths, even though there was like 3,000-ish cases or something. So that tells you like, okay, your kid probably is can encounter it. Like it's not that uncommon, right? However, the vast majority have no problem and get over it, right? And then knowing, okay, what's my intervention? So Dr. Susanna Humphreys, again, I just love her. She has a vitamin C protocol for whooping cough that has helped people like expedite their recovery through that. And like again, these are all things that you can like keep yourself a little notebook. Like, what's the risks? How can I do this? Um, look up statistics within your country. And some of them are hard because like pneumonia and influenza are linked together. So you can't really tell those true rates. But like a big thing that a lot of people don't talk about is breastfeeding. Like if you can breastfeed, like if you're still in that stage of life, if you can breastfeed at least for 13 weeks on like strictly exclusive breastfeeding, that reduces the risks of so many of these like alarming illnesses like pneumococcal, Hib, rotavirus, like really any respiratory RSV, like respiratory and gastrointestinal issues, like that should be what's being talked about as preventative versus vaccines, in my opinion. And
Yeah.
then, there are other things you can do like at home, like elderberry syrup, feeding them organic food, non-GMO food, making sure they get enough sleep, like really simple things to just have as part of your lifestyle that can help them be healthy and ready to encounter whatever they may encounter too.
Yeah, I think that's the one of the most important things, like lifestyle and, like having a genuinely good health. Like I'm sure when you have a sick child, it's completely different, but like when you have healthy kids, you should be keeping up with, like not processed foods. And I think that it does go a long way.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yes, well, I definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing your story today. I think that this will definitely touch a lot of ears. Hopefully, lots of people kind of open their eyes and get the information they need.
Well, thanks for having me. I mean, it's been fun. I could talk about this all day.
I know,
So,
honestly, it's one of those things. Yeah, I feel like every time I have a podcast, I could go on forever. And I'm like, well, we really could talk for 8 hours here.
yeah, but we both have kids and life. So, what are you
Yes.
going to do?
Well, yes. Well, thank you again and stay tuned for next week.